Thank you for joining the ETRAGE webinar. Today we will focus on maintaining a high-performing Windchill PLM system. We will address the continuous tuning of these complex systems that support your business from product conception through to product retirement. Please note, everyone is muted. You will need to use that Q&A icon for any questions that you can submit at any time during today's presentation. Additionally, a recording of today's webinar will be available online for a rewatch or to share with your colleagues. And everyone registered today will receive a link via email when it's available later this week. I'm Sinead from ETRAGE, and joining me today is Ephraim, our PLM manager. We have both been in the PTC and manufacturing space for over a decade now. Our team works hand in hand with design and manufacturing companies on their PLM adoption, whether that's the beginning of an implementation, the expansion of being able to use PTC functionality, tuning any of your processes, or providing gap solutions to match your business needs. ETRAGE presents design and manufacturing webinars every 2 weeks. We also present at PTC user group meetings. This month, we will be presenting both Windchill and Creo topics at the User Global Summit. And you can see on this calendar that next month, we will look at ETRAGE's solution for being able to get your Windchill BOM data to your ERP, eliminating manual entry and human error. All upcoming classes and events can be found at etrage.com. So today I'll do a brief introduction of ETRAGE, and then I'll hand things right over to Ephraim, who will walk you through what ETRAGE recommends as your best practices, and he'll be demoing those throughout today's presentation, and then we'll have time for your questions. So who is ETRAGE? ETRAGE is a PTC partner that started as a software development company over 20 years ago. Since then, we have expanded our offerings to provide product lifecycle management adoption to extend beyond engineering and across your entire manufacturing enterprise. Our global development and support teams address your PLM adoption by supporting your systems, your processes, and your people. Again, whether you're a startup or if you've been in business for over 100 years, we're here to help find solutions that fit your business needs. And with that, Ephraim, I hand it over to you.
Thanks, Janet, and welcome everybody. These are the topics that I intend to cover today, but when it comes to Windchill best practices, there's a whole lot more to that than what you see on this list. But these are the main that we feel they should be administered every day, every week, every month to make sure that your Windchill system is performing optimally. So I'm going to kick it off by just talking about the Windchill architecture. So a basic setup for a Windchill system, you would only require a database server, administrative directory. So database server basically to store your metadata information. In other setups that are very small, you can also use it to store physical files, so to blob the database. But as a Windchill best practices, we advise that you do not do that. Database only get used to store metadata, and then the vault or the physical files get saved in the local system directory. So administrative directory can normally use the open source like an OpenDJ. For that, this is now used to authenticate and store the metadata or information about the Windchill users, and then the Windchill application itself that is bundled with the web server that then renders information or makes this data available to a client eventually. So you can have multiple servers for this components. So you can have a separate server or you can have what we call a monolithic setup or approach, where you have all the servers or the components of the Windchill running on one server. So this is a basic or a minimum requirements to get your Windchill system running. Then on top of this, or as your PDM, PLM grows, you can then start adding additional components to the system. For instance, additional components such as the visualization server or the worker. This is the system that creates or publishes the neutral lightweight formats that can be used downstream. So things like the lightweight 3D that can be opened in Creo view for someone who's reviewing or checking and redlining the model, to do that and be able to save that information back into Windchill as part of the as part of the module. Or this can be linked to your enterprise directory, like an AE, or through SSO setup to your Microsoft enterprise administrative directory. So you can do that, and you can use this in two ways. You can use it as the main user storage information, or you can use it just as an authenticating system. So you still store your users in the administrative LDAP, but you use your company AD to authenticate those users. Then the next one would be the indexing server. So indexing server, simply to extract from the data in Windchill and create an indexing table based on that information. This makes it easy for you to search for a part against any information you know about it. Things like description, metadata, or material attribute information. You can use that to search if it is indexed using the indexing search. And the nice thing with the indexing search is it allows for quick retrieval of this information, because you're not directly searching on the database server using the search indexes that it creates. But the searching database that's been updated and kept in a separate database system to specifically do the indexing and the searching of data. And you could also have the mail server setup. This is mainly to send notifications out to users. If I am part of the promotion process as an approver, I'll then get an email that says, I need to approve this. This is also a good component to have as an administrator, because what it will also do is you can set up your email account to get notification if there is any system level issues with your Windchill environment. So if a publisher server or visualization server goes down, it'll notify you. Or if the entire Windchill system is not available, you can get some notifications from there. Okay, then I mean, on top of this, you can also integrate this with other systems like your downstream ERP systems and so on. Then in terms of just information on how Windchill systems work and how we can fix certain issues, if you are a PTC customer, you should have a PTC account, and that allows you to access the PTC Knowledge Base Center. So I use this every day. If there's anything, any keyword, any issue you pick up on the log, you take part of that error that makes sense to you, put it in the knowledge base. This will return a very useful information that might help you solve that issue quicker, or be proactive in terms of sorting out that issue. If there's anything that you need to know about a certain component of the system, there is the documentation that's available in the very support PTC Support Center that would help you learn and understand how certain things can be achieved. Then, lastly, on the Windchill page itself, you get a help center that would simply take you to information about any keyword that you'd search for. And just as an addition to this is also, if you need additional information on this, you can always reach out to ETRAGE's support center, and then we will be able to assist you with that information as well. Some additional performance tuning articles that PTC have handy that I use, and I always suggest to other people to use, are basically on these articles here. So for just the Windchill performance tuning, it will be that first article there. If you search for that article number, it will give you, it will take you to that article, and you can see what you need to do to fine tune or improve your system performance. Also, with the Windchill statistics, they have very useful articles on how to update the Windchill stats on the Oracle and Microsoft server. This is very important to do on your system. I normally do this with our customers on a monthly basis, but if they have a big system, I normally do it bi-weekly. What this does is, especially if you don't have an indexing server that you talked about, what this does is it always updates the tables that you would normally, or Windchill would normally search against, to make sure that those tables are always up to date and refreshed at all material times. And then there is a tool in Windchill that's called Windchill Configuration Assistance. This basically helps you in sizing your system in terms of the available RAM, available CPU, available space that you have on that server. So it bases those performance tuning attributes based on the hardware specification you have on that server. But it also gives you an option to specify your own attributes while running it as well. And it basically guides you through the entire system until it sets your system to use or optimize on the resources that it has available. And the other page that's very useful is the server status page, and I'll take you to this page now. Nice thing with this page is it'll give you some additional monitoring tool to basically see how your system is performing. Again, as an administrator, if I need to restart my PC, I can quickly look at this page and see how many users are currently on my PC. It doesn't give you the number of, or it doesn't give you the names of users on the system. There's a report that you can run for that. But what it does is it simply shows you that there is users currently running or currently logged onto the system and active. And then to also check things like how long your system has been running, that information is also available on this page. What we normally advise that ETRAGE is for you to restart your system every month. So just restart it, clear some cache, and give it a fresh new start. That also helps in improving performance on the system, or resetting the performance on the system. And the memory usage, when Windchill is running, there's components that runs also as processes for the Windchill system, the method server and the background method server. So background method server handles things like publishing, or when you're checking in, it basically handling that check-in process in the back end. But things like the queries that users do are normally handled in the method servers. And depending on the number of users you have on your system, you could have multiple method servers, saving those number of users. My advice would be, if you have more than 25 users, maybe it's the right time for you to add additional method server, so that you have two method server, running on your system and handling all those number of users. And some information on the database calls here. So normally, it's important for you to check this every day. And whenever you see a red highlight on these numbers, any of these numbers is marked as a red, just know that your system is in danger in terms of performance. There's an issue with some of the queries trying to query your database. So you might want to check what is wrong with your database system, and what is the queries that are causing issues. So this is the page that I also check every time for all our customers. Lastly is just the server status. Normally your system will always say it's 100% available, but if it's less than that, say 92, 93, that is still fine. This information simply says this is the number of pings that the system did to the vault data, and then it could reach the vault data or it failed to reach the vault data. But if the system is, we always strive to have it run on the 100% availability. So at this stage, I just want to quickly show you where you'd find that. So in the Windchill system as an administrator, if you go to the site and then the utilities link, it will take you to this page, and it segments this with system administration, business administration, auditing, which is the report part of it. And then with the latest versions, you'll also see the cloud configuration as well there. So for that page, the server page we talked about, it is this status page here. And if you look at mine, you'll see it's always it is now on 100%. It means my system is okay and performing okay. At times, this status will give you a different thing, but especially if your system is secured and you updated your SSL certificate, but you didn't update it properly, this status will always reflect something different on here. So you will complain about the servlet server, which is your web container, servlet server not responding. Then you'd have issues, or the user would have issues accessing the data of the vault. I can see from here that my system has been running for 7 days to date. And again, if I go into the monitoring tools here, there's additional tools that I can use to get additional information. So things like log viewers, this is to see the method server, the background server logs from this interface instead of going directly into the database. The one that I use a lot, especially when you're having those database issues, or when this page over here shows the red markings, is to look at this top SQL sample intervals and just check based on the time which queries were run, and then you look at the time that it took. So if there's one that took a very long time, like let's say 100 seconds or something like that, you might want to go into that specific query and see what is that query, what is it doing, and from there you can circle back and maybe check with the users who is actually running those high queries. But that will normally help you in troubleshooting your database connection to Windchill. So that's that. And then the next thing I want to talk about is the Windchill queue monitoring. So in a complex PTC Windchill environment, background queues are the engine room of your system. So they basically handle everything from the CAT publishing, your indexing, to workflow notifications, and also ERP integration jobs that you're sending down to your ERP. When these queues stall, this particular queues stalls, user productivity grind to a complete halt. So objects cannot be released. Reviewers won't be able to get to review that data because the publishing queues are also stuck. And so whenever or this is one of the things that you need to check daily. And whenever there is any failed or severe entries, you want to go in there and fix those. Some of them won't be fixed because the workflow we have completed. As an example, those ones you can go in and just delete them. Again, it's always important to monitor if anything is actually happening. So monitoring the total entries and the waiting entries logs. So if this waiting entry logs is not going down, then we know there's something wrong. For instance, this is for the publisher. If this is not going down, then I know chances are my publisher is either down or something is misconfigured there, it's not working as it should. So in that case, you might wanna go in there and check if your publisher is performing. So this is nice because it gives you that guidance. But the problem with this is if this goes down, not goes down, but the number goes very high, it presents these challenges we'll talk about now. So first one be that if the large number of queues entries will definitely cause a large queue table in your database system. This will immediately lead to slower queue in processing and poor overall system performance. And it will also delay some background activities like you would have released something and but whenever someone refreshes the page on the Windchill system, it still shows as in work. And it's simply because that job, it's still waiting in the queue or it's stalled in the queue. Also the notifications, you're expecting, or someone is telling you that I've created the promotion process or promotion request, I'm waiting for you to approve it. But because of the queue being so high or stalled, I'm not getting those notification emails as an approver, or I'm not getting my task in the workflow, or again, someone who's downstream or someone who's a reviewer or a checker cannot get the viewables published because they are blocked in the queue. Second one is that we know with Windchill, all the queues or many of the queues work on the first in, first out basis or mode. We call it a FIFO model, and execute one entry at a time. So if there is any long running or a stuck, job on the queue, that will subsequently that will block any subsequent entries you have. So this can delay the user activities because it's blocking everything: the emails, the promotion, the publishing. And again, the severe and failed entries worsen this. They might be sitting there, they completed, but for the mere fact that they're there and they are in the database, they might cause blockages and delays, which would definitely impact on the performance. And again, once the job is completed successfully, the system doesn't automatically remove it from that list. So this will basically accumulate in the database and start causing, the bloated tables in your database. So this is information that needs to be paged time to time to prevent this and to make sure that the database performance is always optimal. Then last issue on the list here is that there's huge backlogs in publishing and chat queues, from obviously the failed large assemblies, or maybe the misconfigured workers can lead to long delays, harm jobs in the queue, or users republishing. So what happens is if the user is not sure what's causing the publishing job to fail, every time what they'll do is they'll just send it back for republishing, and that will just build up on the queue and worsening the clock in the queue. And again, if there's a super user in the Windchill system who sees all the list of failed jobs, they would normally select the whole list and then just resend them back for republishing. So this would definitely impact on the performance of the Windchill system. So I'll show you where to find this in the system. So again, this is also under the system utilities on the site administration page, under system administrations, under the queue manager. There we go. So this are all the queues, different queues that you have on the system. So like I say, the most important part is to make sure that there is no severe queues. In my case, I see there's some indexing queues that were created and they all failed. So I can basically go into the details of this and see what was this about. And I mean, looking at this, I can already see that this was about 3 years ago. The best thing to do in this case would be to select everything and just delete this because I don't need them anymore. Clear that queue. I think this is the same, and then you go in and you do that. You clear those as well in that queue. And then for things like email queues, not email queues, the common schedule queue here, you'll see there will be entries on the waiting state. This ones would normally depend on some activities in the system. If your system is set up to send PTC certain files maybe every month, it will queue that information already in the system. Then as soon as that date arrives, it will then run that job. That is why it's called a scheduled or a scheduled queue on here. So you need to make sure that you keep this clean. What also happens is with the publishing queues, the publishing queues here is that once the job is completed and was successful, it will always keep that job on the list here. So the best thing that you need to do is as an administrator, create a job schedule cleanup. So normally go in here and say, I want to create a cleanup job that will, clean or delete from my system all the jobs that are completed. You don't want to do this one because this would delete even the failed jobs. So you can't really go in and troubleshoot why it failed. So it'll normally be this one here, and you set how frequent it should run. Most of our customers it will run every day because it's only removing the successful jobs and leaving out any failed jobs, and we can always go in and check on those jobs. So yeah, that's how you automatically clean up the publishing queues on there. The next thing I want to talk about is the indexing. So Windchill stores metadata and files in the relational databases and file vaults. So the index search engine allows users to perform high-speed Google-like keyword searches across both object attributes and the actual content within the file. So files like your Word documents, your PDF, your CAD, you can search text that is inside the file, the actual content. That is how far the indexing takes that. So you also need to make sure that you monitor this daily. And the important thing with this is if there is any failed jobs, let's say there's any failed jobs that didn't index for EPM, on the Windchill side of the database, it will always show the right file. But if the user searches for that file, it will either not return it because it's not indexed yet, or it would return an old version of that file, which means I would be now working with the wrong file because it did return the results, but it was an older version of it. So that's why you need to make sure that all the jobs are processed every day. So the only challenge or the pitfall with indexing is it does not quickly index. So if I've ever the user assembly and check it in now, it will take some few seconds to index that. So that means if anyone is searching for the file at that time, there might be a delay in getting the latest files in. But with our customers, because we keep this up to date all the time, if there's any jobs that are not processed yet, we manually process them before they start work. We never experience an issue where they looking at the wrong file or they're not finding a file through the search. The challenges on this are for those affected objects that didn't index, they become invisible or incomplete in your keyword or global searches. Even though they, like I said, they exist correctly in your database system, you can see them in Windchill if you browse through the folders, but this creates a mismatch between the actual data you have and what the users can find via search. The second issue is because the objects that fail to index properly in the background queue Will also generate this incomplete searches, which will also directly impact on the system performance, or someone relying on the system for this sort of information. And normally what happens is the Windchill system has what they call a queue watcher that will report this information is if a certain threshold is being exceeded for a specific queue. It will then send out a message to an administrator to say you need to look at this queue and check what's going on. But the problem is if the queue is backed up and stalled, this data won't go out, and which then means the watch queue will keep creating this alerts in the system, and that will also back up your queues. So it is important to always clean up the queues as well. Right. Yeah. Then the next thing I'll talk about is the Windchill worker monitoring. So the worker agent administration is an integrated utility in PTC Windchill. This is used to manage and monitor the Windchill visualization service. So the creating of those neutral format files. So the primary role is to simply bridge the gap between the Windchill server itself and this publisher server that converts this CAD and documents into the viewable formats, such as the PVC files, the PDF for drawing, DXF, step files, IGS, and so on. So there is a tool in Windchill where you can monitor the status of this your publishers. So you can run multiple publishers for different CAD tools on this interface, and then this page will allow you to see if a publisher is setting up properly, and if there is any failure in the publisher setting up. You can also find that information on this page. But then if the job has failed to publish, there is another tool also in Windchill that's called the publishing job status. With this tool, I can filter my jobs to see all the failed jobs in the list, all the successful jobs, the jobs that are still in the queue. And again, from this, specifically for the failed jobs, I also get information about what could be the issue. But sometimes this information is not enough, and in that case, I'll have to log in directly on the publisher server, the server that's running the publishing, and then look at the files the log files in there. That would give additional information on top of what I've seen on here. So most of the time, when you get the fail to start publish, which we should normally get on this status page, normally the reason would be that either the system that runs, the server that runs that publisher is not running, it's off, or it could be that the Creo, if it's a Creo publisher, the Creo is not licensed. If it's SolidWorks, the SolidWorks is not licensed. Then it is the reason why it's causing those files to fail. The other issue could be that Creo session didn't close up properly, so there is still a process that's still running in the task manager that is actually blocking the second one from running. So those are sort of the reasons that would cause it not to run. And of course, the challenges with this is that if it fails, there won't be new viewables generated for the CAD objects, meaning that this will impact your downstream users. So guys that relies on those publishings, like guys in the manufacturing or someone who needs to review your drawing, they cannot review or collaborate on the design effectively in Windchill. And also the publishing queues can accumulate thousands of pending jobs, because for those jobs that failed, you now have to resubmit them on top of the jobs that have been checked in at that time. So the whole queue now creates a backlog for all those jobs that are newly checked in, revised, or released. This will often lead to missed deadlines, because information like this gets discovered at the late stage of the project, where we find that, okay, the publishing that we were working on is actually out of date because this failed in the Windchill system. Then the second one is obviously the slow engineering and review cycles, because these people rely on that information generated from the publishing to review and approve. So if they're not getting this information, their job basically stops, or they don't really trust the system, and they eventually resort to workarounds where they get this file shared manually with them outside of the system. Which is also dangerous because they might be working on the file that is not released as yet. And lastly, in a mature Windchill deployment, people rely on this sort of information for downstream systems like ERP. So if this system is not offering that, it might impact the the broader PLM use in the company. So I'll quickly show you where you would normally get that. So for Windchill publishing or visualization agent, this is the tool that you would use for this. So in my case, I have two visualization systems that are being set up here. The Windchill one that's running Pro E or Creo publisher, and then the one that's running SolidWorks publisher. So I know my SolidWorks publisher one is currently down now. If I try to start it, you'd see it will give us a different status on this page here, because it cannot find that server. But for my Pro E Creo, which is running and available, that will show a different status as started. And then on there are additional information or useful information on here is it will also show you how many number of jobs it's processed on here. So you'll see that the Creo publisher is now available. It can process the jobs, but the SolidWorks one failed to start because at this stage it is off. So it gives you an option to go in and check where the system is down or there is a license issue on that SolidWorks. And then that's the one way to check that information. The other way would be from the job monitor here. If your job has failed, I'll filter this with the failed jobs, and if I pick any of the failed jobs here, it tells me at the bottom here why this had failed. It couldn't open this file in the Creo. So in my case, I know this is because I have updated this file in Creo 12, but my publisher is running Creo 11. So Creo has been updated, but I forgot to update it in my publisher as well. So that is why it is causing this failure. But to get that additional information, you'll have to go into the Windchill server and then go to the actual logs to get that exact information about why it's not loading that module in. Okay. Then the next thing is with the users and groups. So normally what happens in Windchill is when someone gets removed from an AD, that user reflects as a disconnected user in Windchill. Sometimes it causes issues, especially with the data that user has created in the system. So there is a function in Windchill that you can run every month as an administrator to remove disconnected users or to reconnect those users if they're now using a different AD account or different LDAP account. And the other advice we give is whenever you're setting an access control, always set it at the group level or roles, and not at the users level. In fact, at ETRAGE, we advise you set that at the roles level, and then you assign groups to roles, and then you add users to the groups, because that makes it easy in terms of maintenance. If there's one user that's left the company or that we need to remove from Windchill, and we have about 10 Windchill products, we don't have to go through all the 10 Windchill products to remove this user. We remove them once in this one group, or we remove them once in this group that's been assigned to a role, and that user will be removed from the entire product. And then the next thing is on the license management. So from Windchill 11.1 onward, PTC has introduced the license management. So this allows you also to run some reports to see how you're actually using the license, and to also assist you in making the decision on whether you want to upscale or you want to downsize when it comes to the licenses. So there is the function. This function basically gives you information about when your licenses are gonna expire. I can see how many licenses I have and how many I have available for each license group. I can run those reports to see how am I using the system. Do I still need additional licenses or not? I can also run reports that shows how many users are registered users, how many are active in the system but are not actually licensed. And this can also gives me a breakdown of what licenses specific users use, and also the time periods and the count, user count, days count of how many days they use the licenses. Then the next thing I want to talk about here is the new thing that PTC has also introduced on Windchill 12.1 onwards. The WinDU, the WinRU reports that we normally run every month to just check if the integrity of our database versus our Windchill system. It's also a tool that you would run before you do an upgrade to check if there's no issues with your data that needs to be fixed before you run an upgrade. So on the previous versions, you would normally run this manually from the Windchill shell and run these utilities from there. But PTC has introduced this where you can create a schedule for this, automated schedule for this, for WinDU activities, and also automate some of the WinDU repair utilities on there. And then you can go in, any day as a Windchill admin and review the WinDU log. What we always advise as ETRAGE is never run the WinRU in an automated format because some of the fixes that comes with the WinRU would require you to make a backup of a database, because this will be actually doing a modification on the database system. So you always advise you run the WinDU utility, review that, and then based on that report, you can run the WinRU activities manually to fix those. So yeah, this is the new thing on the latest Windchill versions. The last topic I want to talk about is the Windchill backups. In my books, I always say a technician is as good as his backup. So I don't like supporting a system that doesn't have a backup. So we have a couple of options that we use to set up the database. A hot backup. Hot backup simply means you're making a backup while the system is running. There's positives about that, but there's also negatives where there could be out of sync between your database and the vault. But normally, for customers that we run the hot backup for, we would normally run this when their system is not used, normally at night when it's not used. And the cold backup would require the Windchill system to be down completely. No one can access the system at this stage. And the benefits for that is you always have consistent data, and your vault in the database will always be in sync. Then, as part of the daily backups, would want to also back up your LDAP database. all the Windchill configuration files, so the files that keeps your Windchill settings, properties files, any customization files. Indexing database, we normally don't really back up because if something happens to your system and we have to do this, we will need to rebuild or recreate an indexing server and then re-index it from scratch. So you can back that up, but you don't necessarily need to. And then of course your file vaults. Right. So
all
at
right.
this stage, we can take questions.
Yeah, thank you, Ephraim. At this time, if there's any questions, I'll remind you, go ahead and use that question mark icon in the toolbar. And while we wait for you guys to type any questions out that you have, we also want to let you know that ETRAGE does provide Windchill upgrades. So if you're looking to upgrade from being on an off support version of Windchill, whether that's a single or a double, what we can do is we'll schedule a complimentary health check of your current environment and provide you with a proposal so that you can plan if you want to upgrade now or you want to in the future. We're happy to provide those budgetary numbers. So let's see. I don't see any questions yet. We do have lots of solutions. If you're interested in finding out more about ETRAGE, you can visit our website or our YouTube channel. We have videos of past webinars that you can watch at either location. We also invite you to reach out and have a conversation with us. We're happy to address any challenges that you may be having around your company's PLM adoption. I'll take one more bounce of time to see if there's any questions. Not seeing them. Well, if anything comes up after today's session, feel free to email or call us. You have our contact information up here, but you can also reply to the invite that you received for today's webinar. We will be sending out a link to today's recording again so that you can rewatch or share with your colleagues. I know Ephraim covered a lot of information for you. And with that, ETRAGE thanks you for spending time with us today, and we will see you next time. Take care.